access is big. And some of my prime scrapes that are very active during the rut, I don't know where these bucks are coming from. I can't pick them up in the summer, a lot of them, so I have no clue where they're bedding. So I'm not even going to attempt to hunt them until what I think is a good week. So I'm staying out of there completely. I'm not going to do any human intrusion on my part. And other guys in there, there may very well be. And that's like some of the, like you were saying about that one, you went off of historical data where these, last year and where that buck was crossing and that. Who knows? There might have been somebody else that
you're right.
was in there, and just that human scent may have changed his pattern. But I see that because we're Beau and I think you're the same way. But I'm constantly expanding my area, putting cameras as a leave them soak for a year, checking them once in a while, but as gathering information, not necessarily going to hunt that area, but always trying to keep it fresh, and a potential area or picking up a good buck or whatever. And, I'll get an area, and I have all kind of scrake activity, all, end of October, daylight photos. So then I go and hunt it, and it seems like after my first set, it just shuts down. And I think it's my presence. I mean, they knew I was there. I might not have seen nothing, but I think they definitely scented me and knew I was there. And, you got to go back and analyze that and say, okay, what can I have done different? How could I have accessed that differently? Is it even huntable? There's scrapes that I have that there's no good access. And it's if it's a good buck, you got to take the chance and go with it. But there's one scrape that I know I've learned through the years. I've hunted it, probably 3 or 4 years, and a couple times a season, and I don't think I'm going to hunt it this year because I can't get in there without them knowing I'm in there. But I'm going to try to find something on the outskirts of that area that maybe, give me the advantage, give me the non-intrusive access, I just got to. So that's another thing I'm changing up, trying to just going back through and analyzing these scrapes I'm hunting where I have good camera activity, but I may not be seeing deer. Why? What's going on? Well, there's that other situation I was telling you about last year, Beau, where same scenario, nice bucks, daylight activity, but it was in a shallow little gully, I guess, going up the hillside. It was probably 3/4 way up, but the wind swirled in there. It didn't matter where. It didn't matter where or when I went and what wind I sat on. I got blowed at. I did see a couple bucks. They weren't within shooting range. None would have been one I would have shot at anyways, but I was getting busted every time I sat there. So I'm not going to, I still run a camera on it for informational purposes, but I'm not going to hunt it this year. I just don't think I can get away. I got to find something on the outskirts of that, trails going in, or maybe a scrape that I don't know about. But I got to hunt it differently.
Well, yeah, and that reminds me too. And I remember that situation with you, but I remember Uncle Francie talking about that specifically, where he was hunting this really big deer, and he had seen him, and he blew at him, and he saw the second biggest deer they had in there, blew at him. Same thing. It was like the spot to be at, but there was no way of hunting it. It was again one of those little shallow kind of ditches or valleys that are in there. And if anyone is listening. Rusty Johnson talked about it in episode 310 about like these ditches and stuff and hunting them, and you can, but it's so tough in these little valleys, and then they're so tough. Some of them don't even show up on maps, because they're such a shallow spot. But it creates this like just vacuum and swirling. And as I came up with a term that I'm going to start using, it's called thermal tsunami. It's just where the wind just does whatever it wants to.
That's right, Bill. That's a good one.
You like that?
Yeah.
I was joking.
We got
about
a thermal tsunami going on here.
When I was out in Utah, I was doing a video for Sitka on wind and thermals, and some of these guys, I said, I might throw out a term you guys never heard of before, and they're like, "What do you mean?" And I was like,
Bunch of rookies,
thermal tsunami, and they looked at me, they're like, "What is that?" I was like, something,
you schooled them.
I was like, "That's something I made up."
But no, you can't tell me.
It's gonna,
guys, this is what we use back east. This is you guys ain't ready for this.
it's gonna make the next edition of Webster.
Yeah. But honestly, some of those spots are just unhuntable. But like you said, I think that's the where you kind of look at it and you try to look at it from a wider view at that point and try to figure out how are they getting to this spot?
Yeah,
and,
where else were they
sense.
going during that
It's
day?
kind of like a saddle. So like, saddles are in the rut. We've talked about it in the scouting camps a lot. It's like, okay, yeah, that might be a hunter magnet. Maybe the bucks don't want to go through there during the daylight, the mature deer. But where are they coming from to get to that point? Because they might be skirting it a little bit, or they might be and trying to look at the bigger picture on where they might be coming from and going there. But the hard part about that is when you find one of those, like, let's just call it a hub, as far as like where trails might be crossing and that little dip and where all the wind's swirling and they have the advantage. Obviously, if you're sitting there, you have multiple trails that come to that point where you start going the outskirts. You might only be on one of those trails, or one. You only might have a 10% chance of seeing the deer, where if you would have had 60% if you were in that spot. But you actually have a chance of killing them at that point.
Right.
What Joe touched on is totally be aware. When you're going in there, you're putting the human scent in. You could be the reason why the deer aren't showing up. People, I think, sometimes, just don't believe that they're the. You know what I mean? I know years ago, Jason was hunting my buddy. There's nobody in there. I'm going through there. I said, whoa, you're there every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which, a situation really, like Joe said, ask yourself. Did I FS up? Is this, I'm not, like being dropped in on a helicopter sent free. You know what I mean? You got to get in there. And I know there's times when I get to my stand, I'm like, get up in it. I'm like, oh, I made it. I didn't spook nothing. I feel like my entrance was good because I take that all into consideration. I was like, and it is tricky getting to these spots because you could bump one. Maybe it's before daylight or daylight. You make a little bit too much noise. Your wind blows this way. And, that's why I like going in sometimes in the morning at light so you can see what you bump. But there's so many times that you get to your tree and you're like, weights lift off my shoulder because I made it. Because there's things that you could do that potentially ruin your spot.